Back in my day, you collected rings so you didn't die.
Hello and welcome to the QUACKCAST. This is the Drunkduck QUACKCAST. I'm Ozone Ocean and with me is Tance, Baines and Pitface.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, so this week we're talking about what is the moment where your character was most character, what is the moment where your character is most themselves in your story? What is the key version? The example.
Defining moments.
Defining moments, yeah, for your character, exactly. Or not even that. I mean, yeah, defining moments, that's a good thing. Or what is the moment you can point to in your comic, your story, where your character is mostly the way you think of them as, themselves. So, and also movie characters or story characters or TV show characters, comic characters, any other characters, In the in the Patreon video, we talked about Star Wars for our special Patreon subscribers who were able to see our video. But so we're not going to be talking about that in the QUACKCAST. That's only for our subscribers. They made me do it that way. It's more intelligent, I suppose, to do it that way. Anyway, before we get into that, we're going to do the feature. QUACKCAST is going to tell us about a comic called How Blade Got His Name. So, Quai, how did Blade get his name?
Hello, this is QUACKCAST, and the feature I've selected for this week is How Blade Got His Name by Sid Nuhi, and it is rated T for teen. Blade Slayer has always had his own set of disturbances, ranging from hallucinations to manifested hauntings that were eating him alive ever since he was a young boy. His mother, a true non-believer and skeptic in the spiritual world, is not one to believe that any of her son's trials and tribulations have anything to do with the spirit realm. However, after meeting two spiritual guides one evening, Blade is about to sever the symbolic cord that has tied his soul to his mother's soul ever since he was a boy. This comic is a prologue to Lucifer Experiments, which is also created by Sid Nuhi, currently in progress. This comic is characteristically drawn with the look of traditional pencils, and it is colored digitally using texturized paint tools. The color palette gravitates around neutral and earth tones, giving the pages a soft and gentle feel. Learn the origins of Mr. Slayer's name and read How Blade Got His Name by Sid Nuhi, rated T.
And that was QUACKCAST with How Blade Got His Name. Okay, so next up we have the featured music. Gumwells has given us the theme to Small Gods, I believe. Yes, he has. This is classical, melancholy, and stately. The cello sings us in, and the rhythm guides us. The music layers and builds upon itself, crafting a stately pile. Hints of chaos flash through as the theme continues. Then all of a sudden it comes crashing down with a clash of cymbals. So take it away, Gumwells, with Small Gods. was our theme music for the week. The theme to Small Gods, comic by Boy Faff, and it's rated T for trouble. Okay, so guys, your favorite versions of your characters, or the key moment when your character pops up. What is it? For me, for Pinky, the thing I think most exemplifies Pink's is chapter 6, where she's arguing with the rest of her crew in the tank and being sort of selfish and stuff like that. But the character is really defined by her interaction with these other people who she's the leader over, and it's there. The way she interacts with them, the way they interact with her, and the way I draw her, all that kind of stuff. It really does sort of show, oh my god, this is Pinky. This is her. How about you guys? What's the time where you really think that your characters came to be?
Well, for me, I think I had to think about it quite a bit because it's been lots of, like, a fair number of stories, like maybe 12. But yeah, there's one where Oscar and TK are my two sort of slacker hero guys are looking for TK's videotape collection that's been stolen. So they're like traveling through the town, and all of this crazy, like, dangerous stuff is happening, and people seem to be gunning for them. And TK wants to stay because he wants his tapes. Oscar wants to leave. And at one point, Oscar gets frustrated enough to leave. And then, as he's walking away, he remembers this quote from a somewhat obscure movie, and it inspires him to be brave. And then he chooses to go back and help his friend. That's kind of who Oscar is. So if you're talking about the crux, if there is one, this is an ongoing series, so I don't know if there's ever going to be one scene that says it all, but it would be that, I guess. Like, he'll choose his friends, and he takes a lot of his cues from, like, movies he's seen.
Okay, all right. So we've got multiple kind of elements there that really do define him morally, and also his personality as well. Well, that's nice.
Yeah, kind of like he'll choose his friends in the end, but he is afraid.
Yeah. So what about Basil or Fotis?
Okay. Actually, for Fotis, I don't think I have reached the scene where I finally depict him as who he is and who he will be, because this is an origin story for Fotis, basically, what we're going through. But I would say the core element for Fotis and who he is would be two scenes, and that is the first scene where he is shooting the bull with the guys in his original hiding place at the brewery, at the abandoned brewery, and the Nazis crash the place, and how he reacts, and how he was having fun before, and how he reacts in trying to save his friends, and he doesn't really think about himself at all. That's him, and that's who he is. And that is a trait that runs through all of his decision making in the comic. And the other part of him is, unfortunately, like just before the entire torture sequence that he goes through, where he wakes up and he realizes that he's captured, and the way that he despairs and he's terrified, but it doesn't occur to him to actually give the Nazis what they want make it easier on himself, it really doesn't. It's not an option for him, and that is also who he is. He one person said, "Oh my God, I'm going to die here. I'm going like this is the end," and I'm in for a lot of trouble, and just doesn't go. He's not actually tempted to give the secret to the Nazis, and he will not even. And then later he doesn't consider himself, oh my God, look what I did. I held out under the Nazis. I'm this, I'm all that, and everything. He just reacts to things in extraordinary ways and never thinks twice about it. And that's who he is. As his driving forces are these two elements. And that never gets to be as he will be, in the sense that he hasn't developed fully yet. He has a good few things to go through yet to reach the state like this, to complete his personality to what he will be going forward in time. That, Without Moonlight follows history.
Yeah.
So that's
he's a growing character.
Yeah.
He has that.
It feels like it's very much the crux right now in terms of what he's experiencing and how he might come out the other side and processing things and all that.
Yeah, he's at a huge.
Yeah, that is the experience that he's going through now is something that defines him to the end of his life. It's one of the super defining moments of a lot more than the torture, like a lot more than that. What he's going through now is a lot more significant for his personality than the abuse that he went through.
What would you say about, say, our first intros versus, the moment you think most exemplifies the character? For, say, in Pinky's terms, she's sort of introduced as some kind of crazy person with a flamethrower thing, and then, I don't know, coming in on a helicopter or whatever, just this weird kind of sexy lady in a helicopter, and
what was your original title?
It's also the name of a 70s era budgie song.
For me, that appearance of Pinky is more embryonic than anything else. For me, she wasn't developed properly, so I don't feel that as personally being a very good example of what she is. What about you guys with your first intros?
That's legit. I'll just say, that is legitimate, though, to introduce a character like this is what they are on the surface, the very surface level.
Exactly.
That they seem to be. And then later,
hyper realized essence of that character, and then from there.
Okay. Oh, interesting. I like that. So I'm not doing everything wrong.
No, I don't know if you were thinking you were, but no, of course not. You don't always want to introduce your character saying that, this is my inner conflict, and this is what I want. But I realized there's a hole in my heart, and I really...
Yeah, and that wouldn't really be realistic. When you first meet a person, you don't really see down to the fourth layer of his soul, really deep down. You see the surface. That's all you see. What they project to others, at least.
What about?
you don't want to give a speech. You don't want your character to be introduced usually by giving a speech about who they are. Nobody
the
cares.
Backstory, yeah.
So that's a lot of time a better way to do it. I think to show what do they seem to be, what's their. I mean, like you said, Ted, a hyper realized picture of what they are from the outside.
I'm feeling better about it now. What about Bones? We just skipped over Bones.
Yeah.
See, Bones, you've only been gone a couple years and they've already forgotten all about you. You tried so hard to make a mark. Bones, I think from the very beginning it was defined what his character's like. And that's why I had the intro how it was so it starts so Putrid Meat starts off that he is fighting with a bunch of hobos over a garbage can, over a dumpster. And that's Bones. And it gets progressively out of hand from there as things keep on mounting up in the story. As so it's hard for me to find one singular defining moment for him because the whole thing is built on Bones being Bones in every situation, in the most Bones possible in every situation, and things continue to progress and get out of hand the way they do because he is Bones and he makes decisions that Bones would make. And in turn, things happen like, the being hired by mobsters and serial killers to get rid of dead bodies and then accidentally, unleashing a zombie plague over the city, and then everything is out of control. And there's this big civil war between then there's a big civil war between the mobs and the serial killers. And then the king of Septica calls Bones up to plead for him to get it to stop and to make a deal with him. But Bones, just before he signs the deal, he sleeps with the king's wife and he gets caught. and so he gets executed. And like everything building up is because Bones is Bones, the most Bones that he can be. And but I guess as a defining moment, it would be then just after that, when he decides to kind of go more on his back heel and decides, all right, I'm going to get out of this brainwashing facility. If you haven't read Putrid Meat, please go do it because you will be a little confused. A little. But basically, that's when he decides, all right, well, I know what I want, and I'm going to go for what I want, and I'm going to go after Exus and get the city back for myself. And so that's a very defining kind of moment that he goes on the kind of the counterattack like that and gets gets his little group together and everything and heads back towards Septica. So that for him, I guess, would be pretty defining.
He becomes a leader, transitions to.
He tries to. Yeah, I don't know if he's a particularly good one, but he's taking charge of what he wants.
Yeah, it's not just Igor.
Not just take the job. He's like I've said many times, like Bones is a guy who I'd love to see him in any genre. You could do endless stories about him in any genre because he's kind of defined by the way he bumps against other people and other characters, and it shows how different he is from either normal people or just other people. There's a lot of abnormal people in Putrid Meat.
Good point, actually.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
I always thought that put him in the future. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying that's a really good point is, the way that characters are defined by their interactions with other people, which puts it on you as a writer to come up with, good, interesting interactions that do bring out the dynamics in your character in that aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I thought that Pinky was most defined by me in that situation where there's a lot more character interaction. It's just crystallized to way more, and that's what happened. So what about movie characters or whatever that you've seen where you think a character has sort of reached the most perfect version of themselves? I'll bring up one. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, I was gonna say, well, you brought up Friday the 13th before,
Hmm.
and it makes me think about, and Baines can confirm or deny this, um, especially if I'm bringing up the wrong part. I still get confused with them sometimes. I think it's part 5 that I'm thinking of, or is it 7? That when he comes back from the grave as like zombie fuck all Jason.
Mm.
Like
That's
when he
part
becomes
6.
really like
Oh,
supernatural instead of like the madman in the woods. He's supernatural then.
mhm.
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
I
part 6.
think
Yeah.
that was the first one that I saw, and that was super fun. And definitely, it looks like this is a matured, perfectly developed Jason. Like this is the character you want to see in different situations.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Well, it is a good point that in that film series, because, yeah, of course, in the first one, it's not even in there. It's just this weird mutant child in a dream sequence or whatever, isn't it? So he's not even a character in the film. So it doesn't even come up until later, which is interesting. So for me, a character I think of where they're defined in a specific part, Motoko Kusanagi from the Ghost in the Shell series of everything, because she's been in video games and live action films and animation and all over the place. Manga, of course. For me, she is most defined in the standalone Complex series, which is the first TV series she was in, and that exemplifies her perfectly, better than the movie, better than the manga, better than anything else. That's where the character really sort of comes into her own. And I thought that series perfectly rounded out the character and, gave her a kind of life and a proper backstory, proper context. It rounded out the team and everything, and that's, if anyone wanted to sort of get into the character or get into the series, I would point them to Standalone Complex as being, that's the key thing. We don't, even though the first Ghost in the Shell movie is fantastic, the manga is great, I'd still say point to that moment as being the thing that most exemplifies the character. Is there anything like that you guys can bring up? Like, say you've got like obviously Jason. You say it like you'd point to movie number 5 or number 7 as being, yep, this is where the character is most. This is him. This is where he. If you want to get a proper idea of the character, watch this film. Don't even bother with the first one. Watch them out of order.
That far. Yeah. Well, okay, I wouldn't go that far, but. Well, you wouldn't be able to understand Jason in the first film because he's not fucking in it. Except as a memory.
Yeah. It's a very different character, that one.
I think they talk about him a bit. Like some of the characters talk about the legend a little bit.
Yeah.
Wild boy growing up in the woods and stuff like that. And maybe I've never been 100% on why I like part 2 a lot. Why I don't like part 3, I'm not totally sure. But the look of it might be one thing. But maybe the fact that Ginny in part 2 talks about the Jason legend. Like, imagine if, like, what would that be like? Growing up in the woods and like blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And in part 6, the one you're talking about, where he comes back as a zombie, that's part 6. They do way more of that. They talk about the whole mythology of Jason, and kind of like they make a big deal out of him, and you see him in that movie more than in any other movie. So I didn't count the minutes myself. But that's what it said. Like, people hate it. Some people hate it for that reason. He's a zombie now, and he's like, and you
Yeah.
too much. To me, that's like, I agree with you. Like, that's what Jason is to me.
Yeah. And whether you enjoy it or not, it's defining because that's what the character has survived as through all of these years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Magical.
His evolution is kind of interesting.
It is, yeah.
I don't have much energy. I'm really sorry. I'm just.
Oh, you're fine, I think.
Well, these
But,
things are. Oh, sorry, go on.
How many characters are defined in their sixth movie? That long to figure out something so simple, like, oh, a hockey mask, and he's unstoppable.
Yeah, it wasn't until the third one he had the hockey mask, right?
Yeah,
The first or in the second one he had the potato sack.
yeah. I don't mind that either. I like it. I like that movie.
Yeah. So it was like a gradual thing that to me makes like the realization of that kind of final product, that kind of golden area that they hit right there, just so satisfying. Because I do love Jason, what he was before then. I do love him just as the man in the woods, killing people, like whether it makes sense or not, whatever. I don't care all that much. I enjoy the movies, and apparently something happened that I don't understand, and I don't get to understand because I'm just like the victims are. I'm not privy to that side of reality. I'm
Yeah.
where the victims stand. I don't get to know what's going on. I just get to be scared. So, and I love the first movies for, and a lot of people say they're repetitive, and they are, but I love how they utilize their formula. Like some of my best favorite parts of, especially like the old slasher horror movies, are those quiet parts of Friday the 13th where it would just be the final girl left, and she would be like walking around the grounds, not totally privy to what's going on yet, but like she's on alert, like, or, she's, knows she has to watch out for him or to watch out for somebody, but it's just her and it's just Jason, and everything goes quiet and it's dark. And it's perfect. But anyway, so to me, that's a defining kind of part of like the series, that kind of feeling. But as for Jason as a character, I would definitely say when he gets like zombie-mumbified.
Zombie-mumbified. All right. Well, let's broaden it outside of Halloween.
We're moving to our second hour of
what
discussion.
What?
Broaden it outside of what, Oz?
Oh, sorry. Friday the 13th. Shit. I get those confused. They are one and the same to me.
I'm sorry.
I'm
sorry.
Yeah, but big guys with masks. Big unstoppable guys.
No, run away, guys.
Yeah, slowly walking guys.
Speaking of big guys with masks, the first Avengers movie, if y'all out there, anyone cares about superhero stuff and everything, that to me is brilliant in terms of showing like the essence of a bunch of characters who have been around for decades. He does a great job finally of doing the Hulk and understanding like, hey, what's the Hulk? The Hulk is a superhero. He's super strong. It's a regular guy who becomes this beast. It's a superhero story, and it's also a horror story. It's like a werewolf story too. So the Hulk has two scenes in the Avengers movie, one of each. Like one where he's the monster and he's scary and to be feared and fought, and one in which he's the hero. And he does the same thing for Captain America. And in Captain America's intro 2 or 3 scenes, and then in contrast with Iron Man, like they show who this guy is. He's lost in time. He was frozen for decades.
Yeah, that's true.
He's, he'll choose the right. He'll always choose the right thing. He's got these principles and everything like that. And Black Widow is the undercover spy who's beautiful, but she's deadly, and kind of nobody knows it, kind of thing. She's kind of haunted by her past. Like all those scenes, they're good scenes, but it's really he gets right to the core of what those characters are, and so that's a great one.
That's an interesting example. Yeah, it has to define all of those characters and their relationships with each other. Thor and Loki, that whole dynamic between those characters, and the evilness of that Loki is, and how that affects all the others. That's all done in that particular film. Captain, what's his name? Fury.
That many stories have been written about already.
Yeah,
and of course there's nuance and there's great stuff later to dig into, but to sort of get to what's kind of the basics of this character, like what they are, like how do you express that? And I thought that movie was incredible for doing that.
Yeah, it did it so well. Speaking of all this kind of stuff, in the Star Trek series of things in the Star Trek world, for me, the series that most exemplifies what Star Trek is Star Trek: The Next Generation. I feel.
Yeah, I think I could agree with that. What about movie-wise, though? I mean, when you take movies into account too, do you still think that?
The movies are a different beast because they're going off what happened with the first series, and that's really where the movies are sort of carrying on from. Even the ones that are based on Next Generation are still going off that stream of the films, of the original series in that kind of order. So if you're talking about those films, it's hard to get past the second one, isn't it, with Khan? It's because it was the Star Trek films are big and bombastic, and that's what they're about. So whereas the series is about exploration and this kind of allegories of things like racism and all this kind of stuff, told in this sci-fi kind of version, and very human dramas, told in this world. The movies are a very different thing. The movies are about huge spectacle and massive stakes. And the one with Khan, I can't even remember what it was, Star Trek 2. That one really crystallizes all of that. What's that, Charles?
Wasn't that Wrath of Khan?
Yeah, there you go, Wrath of Khan. That one really does sort of go, yep, this is it. This is the thunderous orchestra of what Star Trek can be. This.
From hell's heart I stab at thee.
Is that from part 6, I think? Because that's my favorite of the original movies.
Really?
Oh, really? What was part 6?
Shakespearean Klingon there? Or is that Colin saying that? I don't know. They're very similar characters. The Klingon dude in part 6, always quoting Shakespeare.
Yeah, there was that guy who was saying, yeah, actually Shakespeare was really a Klingon, famous Klingon.
Remember, all I remember from the first, well, not all that I remember, but was how much Christopher Lloyd stood out as a Klingon. Like, dude, that's Christopher Lloyd. Like, what's he doing there? Come on, man.
Under all that makeup, he's still Christopher Lloyd,
Yeah.
Oh god. What about who's that guy? Oh, go on.
In terms of the movies, I forgot which number it was. Of course, the one with the whales was pretty definitive in terms of Star Trekkiness. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the big
remember that
thing,
one.
the cylinder thing, with the big
remember that
thing,
one.
the cylinder thing is, huh?
Yeah, definitely remember that one. You know, the transparent aluminium and all that kind of stuff. That is, you're very right there. Yeah, that is very much
Yeah.
sciencey kind of.
It's got the, like the whole thing where like this alien life force is coming to communicate, but I love that like it's so, we would assume it's coming to communicate with us, but it's not. It's coming to communicate with the whales. And it's just that whole kind of thing is very Star Trekky, like, it's just not what you thought. And then of course like the sense of humor has become a little bit more developed, and the characters and stuff by then, and they have Spock back and stuff. And my dad always quotes that line where William Shatner, Kirk's walking through the street and someone almost hits him and goes, "Dumbass," and he goes, "Well, double dumbass on you." And like it's something you never would have seen in the old series, but here they have him do it, and it feels fitting after everything he's been through in the movies, like losing his son and whatnot, and then getting Spock back, and the whole thing with the I can never remember, Kobayashi Maru, and like the whole lesson with that and stuff. And that having to learn the lesson that he, there are some things that he can't win and that he can't control. And it feels like he's come out of that, especially since you could see that William Shatner's older by now in the movies. And he just really feels like he fits into that role now of being a little tiny bit sillier. Just still kind of, he has his place in the world, but at the same time, it's interesting with these characters. But so I guess, yeah.
And they're back in time. They travel back to the modern day. Well, the 80s, I guess it would be.
Yeah.
The woman they meet, and so that gets to show the characters like that contrast method, right? Like see them against our world and the differences and stuff like that.
Yeah.
My favorite line in that movie is like, she says, "Oh, you're saying you're from space?" And he goes, "No, I'm from Iowa. I work in space."
Yeah.
And you never really think about him
that. Like, so that's made such an impression on me. I don't know why, but like decades later, I remember that. Yeah, Captain Kirk was born in Iowa.
Yeah. You never really think about him as actually coming from America. You think of him as being just this space guy who lives in the future and has never been to Earth. You don't even think about Earth in Star Trek, really. Not in the original series, I think, anyway. You don't. It's just space.
I don't know if they ever go back, unless they're going back in time or whatever. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think now and then they make like comparisons, like, oh, back on Earth, things are like this, but now and then. But like, yeah, it's not really like big plot points that I know of, and I haven't seen every episode, so I could be wrong, but I feel like I agree with you that, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, Next Generation, generally in the series, of the world of the series, I haven't seen the Discovery or Picard or any of that stuff, so I'm not sure. But for me, it feels like that's going in a different direction from what I would like anyway, so I wouldn't bother. I'm not of the opinion that I have to watch every freaking thing in the canon of the thing that I'm interested in order to...
Of course not.
Alright, Doctor Who? That's another big series. There's been a million different versions of that. But for me, Tom Baker, and I think lots of people would agree, he is the Doctor. The guy with the big curly hair, the big teeth, the big coats, the big hats and scarves. That is...
Yeah. I haven't seen much Doctor Who, but he's the guy I always think of. Yeah, of that guy.
Oh, yeah. He's the Doctor Who in The Simpsons as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. They always bring him up as the a representative of Doctor Who in The Simpsons. So Simpsons has spoken.
Does he do the voice?
No, they just stick the character in.
That's a
It's like, 2 seconds of a cameo. You could probably find them all on YouTube somewhere.
right.
Can you guys think of any other, like Indiana Jones? Okay, so Indiana Jones, he's a cool character. Tance likes Indiana, I'm pretty sure. For me,
How can you not?
it's tricky. Like, I would think that it's the first film, and that first kind of thing where he's raiding that temple in the very beginning. That, to me, rounds him out totally, more than any other scene. For me, that is Indiana Jones.
Yeah. When you introduced us to this topic this morning, like I started thinking about characters, and Indy was one of them. And I think what I land on, without thinking about it more, at least, like, is this during that beginning sequence, after they get the treasure and the other guy leaves them on the other side of that chasm. Like, Indy jumps, like he backs up, like deep breath, jumps across the chasm and just catches the other side with his arms. And then there's a close-up of him like smiling with satisfaction, and then he slides down like all the way, like to just like his fingers or whatever.
Oh yeah.
He's happy, and then he just immediately like slides, almost falling off.
Yeah, that's very Indy.
Look on his face.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, that's this guy,
Also,
struggling hero.
there are two scenes for me that define Indy, and that's the one in the third movie where he finally retrieves that cross that he had been going after all his life, and then after the lesson he jumps out of the window in order to avoid talking to his students. So that one thing where he says, like, I will talk to you, each and every one of you, in an orderly fashion and stuff, and then he immediately jumps out the window to leave. So there's that one sequence, and the other one is where he's fighting this huge Nazi guy who is topless, and there's no way that he can beat him. And he tries and tries and tries, and he barely puts a dent in the guy. And then the big Nazi punches back, and he almost gets ejected backwards, and it hurts. And he knows, and you see in his face that he knows that he will not be able to win the particular fight. But then he sees the plane propeller coming up behind the big guy, and his expression changes. That okay, I have been saved by the propeller, not the belt.
Yes.
That also is this very rough, by the skin of his teeth, making it.
Barely scraping through,
But using intelligence versus brute force to win at something, that's always his way. Like, he uses the sneaky way or the intelligent way versus just punching harder like a lot of characters would do. The famous scene where the guy whips out the swords and spins it around, and he just goes, oh, pulls out the gun and shoots him dead. So
that's also very like okay, whatever. And another character that has very defining moments would be MacGyver, from the same era, more or less. And every time in the series, the episodes usually open cold, with him being in this tough situation, and he gets out with the MacGyverism, So, like he uses things that you wouldn't expect in order to create the circumstances that will allow him to escape the tough situation without using violence, and that is very iconic for him. While also being in this sort of slightly like he's not the clutch, but you know that if something can go wrong with what he's doing, it will. Um, so that is also
Okay.
very because if, for example, if there is a banana on the floor, while he's running and it's in his way, he will step on it, and it will hurt. And that also is very iconic for him. Like whenever someone attacks him or shoots at him or punches him or whatever, they have good chances of
Getting
flooring
him. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting because MacGyver was a character that, again, did not really become the proper key MacGyver until a bit into the series. Because early on, he still wasn't properly developed. He was still, like, killing people, you know? He would be actively killing people.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say season 2 and onwards is the character developed as he should be.
And he becomes like a committed like pacifist. Oh, I don't like guns, but in the first, like as the series goes, yeah, he'll pick up a rocket launcher, he'll pick up a gun, and then that changed. It's like say with in Star Trek, it's the same sort of thing. Like in the original the pilot episode, if you ever watch that, and you do in the original series, they did bring that back into that. This version where they go and they get trapped by these big-headed people who are, you know, big brainiacs or whatever, and they've got Captain Pyle, and he's stuck in this wheelchair kind of thing, and he's kind of remembering this first meeting they had with these people, and so what that is they're basically cut scenes from the original pilot, and so what you as a viewer get to see is the characters, how they originally were in the very first, you know, televised instance of these characters. So there's Leonard Nimoy's character, who we know as being, Mr. Emotionless. No emotion. Ooh, logic, Jim. And you see him, you know, looking at all these alien things and laughing and giggling and smiling. And, you know, maybe lots of people would miss that, but, you know, that's a good example of the character not being originally defined in its first instance. The character was only defined later. So yeah, it's amazing how that happens in long running TV shows. Characters get crystallized often quite a bit later. The first impressions are not what the character really is or what they're going to be. Yeah, go on. Sorry, you were going to say something?
No, I wasn't going to say anything.
Oh, right. I was thinking of like in sitcoms, it's the same thing. Like say Seinfeld, the characters. Actually, those characters were defined pretty early on. I think in some other sitcoms, like a shit thing like Friends, I hate Friends. They didn't really become them until a bit later. But Seinfeld, they did kind of crystallize pretty early on and did not change very much. Well, maybe Kramer or whatever that guy's name was. He did sign of change, but the rest of them are very much. They just became themselves, and it was. Oh, and maybe George Costanza, but most of the characters really did sort of go as they began. But in most shows, I don't think they crystallized until like the second season, like MacGyver. That really tends to happen.
Yeah.
Like a fast.
And the Star Trek shows, like most of them, other than the original series, like Next Generation took a long time, like a couple years almost, to really get a handle on who one was and what the show was going to be. Deep Space Nine, the same. The first 2 seasons are nothing like what that series becomes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, the characters are not sharp. The situations are not. It's just a very different show. It's like it's hard to watch. Really, I find the first 2 seasons, and then it gets so good.
Yeah,
that's a wild one.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is? Is it because like the writers who are doing the thing actually need to develop their own like canon, so they know looking at the previous stuff helps them better define what the character's going to be, or gives them a better idea of the character?
Yeah, I think just as they go on, like even though they had their situation, say on Deep Space Nine, there's sort of a fairly complicated setup.
Yeah.
The whole thing. And some of the characters, I think, just Chief O'Brien, I guess, was an existing character. But
yeah.
Other than that, they're all new characters, and there's all these situations going on. But it's like, okay, how does it all work? Like, how does all of that stuff work? Like, those situations, we have the bullet points, but how does it all fit together? How are people dealing with it? Like, how does this Bajoran religion work? And, like, whatever other details. Like, how dark
the cogs, but then they put them all together, and once they start working together, sometimes things develop more in one way versus in other ways. You know, like when they come up with these characters, you know, it's not like they have every single episode of the first series written out, you know.
Right.
And then by the time that's done, maybe even things like the way characters were received, or like feedback and stuff like that might change it, or the writers just kind of get to know them better. I think that happens a lot of times, and I think a lot of people who listen to this QUACKCAST who make webcomics could probably also attest that the more you write your character, the more you kind of get to know them, because again, you see them stacked in different situations and interacting with different characters, and it's funny sometimes how your own character can kind of surprise you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And in that case, like even more so, right? Like you write the stuff, but then you get a chance to see the actors do it, and you're like, oh, okay, like I see how it could work. Like you see how it fits together, and then you see stuff that doesn't work, and you kind of figure it out as you get to watch the finished product kind of thing.
Yeah, or sometimes things even fall into place on accident. Like speaking of Jason's mask, that was an accident. Or back to Next Generation. If you remember, I think for the first seasons, the first season or two, he was beardless, remember? And then what happened between seasons, he grew a beard, and when he came back, instead of having him shave it, they loved it so much, it crystallized something in his character just instantly, so much more.
Right.
And so they had him keep it, and it's like when you see him without that beard, it doesn't seem like the same person, you know. It's just funny, even just little things like that just make the chips fall into place.
That's a really good example, yeah, because that character before, the bare-faced, he's just ugh. But with the beard, my god, now he is a commanding presence. There's the swashbuckling, everything that the character is meant to be works. You don't see him as a mature character or a ladies' man or a swashbuckler without that facial hair, and with it,
even makes him more confident seeming in a way too. It's that kind of, like you were saying, that very commanding. There's just something about it, something almost like nautical, like, you know, like
some people really work with beards.
Mr. Keaton on Family Ties, same thing. One season with no beard.
Oh.
And it looks so weird. Like, beard really makes it work. Or my references starting to get too old.
No, another character.
I remember on I Love Lucy.
Wait, Tan was talking.
Oh, sorry, Tan. Okay. I didn't hear you.
I'm not asleep actually. um, no, I was going to talk about Blackadder as a character that completely changes from season 1 to season 2 and onwards. Originally, the character personalities of Blackadder and Baldric were swapped. But Blackadder was the mean and stupid guy, and Baldric was like the support, like a bit like Sancho Panza to Don Quixote,
Yeah.
but to an evil, stupid Don Quixote. Whereas Blackadder in the second season and all the other ones is the conniving, very sassy, very glib, and like he has all the zingers and the British humor riding on him as the smart, evil, and sneaky person, and Baldric is the one that is the stupid one that he bounces off of in a way.
Yeah.
And I think that was a masterstroke in my opinion. I don't really like the first season of Blackadder as much as the other three.
Yeah.
And the more he develops, the more confident he becomes in this Blackadder trope, let's say, the better he looks on the screen. Yeah.
That is interesting, isn't it? Another example, a second season where things are defined and they're suddenly working. Whereas in the first season, it's not.
It's clunky. It's not the same. It's like they're still finding their feet, their legs, whatever. So sorry, but mistakes in English.
No, finding their feet, that's the term. Pretty sure.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah. So and that's another example of where, obviously they rework stuff. They find out, this worked, this didn't work. But they're also getting a handle of the character. Now they've lived with the character for a while. Then they can, see how the character works better because they've had it for a while. Yeah, so definitely the sexiest version of Blackadder was the second one.
And I'm not looking for sex in Blackadder anyway. So my favorite is the fourth. Blackadder goes fourth. It's the most bittersweet, and I think the better executed in terms of script and acting and everything.
Okay, well, he's the more human Blackadder. It's not cartoonishly evil there. Hey?
He's still Blackadder, absolutely.
He is. But he's...
There is this air of desperation, I guess, around him more.
Yeah. But we could, as audience members, we could see ourselves feeling much the same way as him in his comical frustration at the ridiculousness of the situation he finds himself in, which is the first one. Very great.
Absolutely. And then for the most fun for me, it was the third one, where he and Hugh Laurie are absolutely like they have so much fun being together in one room, and one is the smart evil guy, and the other one is the happy-go-lucky stupid, but also evil guy. So that is a lot of fun to watch.
That is a glorious example of those characters. Yes, Hugh Laurie's Prince George, I think. The character he plays, is just magnificent. Love it. That is, for me, as relating to that actor, that is the key version of Hugh Laurie. There's no other that exemplifies Hugh Laurie as a man more than Prince George. I've seen him in Fry and Laurie, Bones, and Bertie Wooster in his thing with Stephen Fry, and that is Prince George. That is the key version of him for me. Every time I see that actor, I always think of him as Prince George. Well, I think we've reached the end of this particular Quackcast on the key versions of characters, and this would be something we should open up to the community. I think where does your character most exemplify themselves? Which is the key version of your character? Which is the proper version? Where does your character come into their own, find their feet? Okay. Thank you very much for listening to this Quackcast number 502, which is also a song by Megadeth, I believe.
How'd you know?
I'm just a genius. I just know everything. Thank you for that, Pit. All right. Bye-bye till next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.